lower court. They can affirm that decision, which means they agree with it. They can reverse it, which means they change the decision. And they can remand the case to the trial court for further proceedings. They can also modify, but that isn't part of the question. In Jill Kirby's lawsuit against Antonio or Anthony Carvello in federal court, there was a document which was filed that set out the grounds for the court's jurisdiction, the cause of action in Jill's case, and the relief or remedy which Jill was seeking. And that document was called the complaint, and it was actually in your textbook. When there are jurors being chosen, they can be challenged. There are two ways to challenge them. One is through peremptory challenge, and another is for cause. A peremptory challenges are limited in a couple of ways. One is that they're limited in number. You only have so many, so if you use them all up, you don't have any more, and you can't challenge a juror, sometimes a bad juror. The other thing is you cannot discriminate in certain ways, limited to race and gender. You're not allowed to kind of have a pattern of discrimination in peremptory jury challenges based on race or gender. Attorney's fees come in different forms, including fixed fees, hourly fees, and then there's one place for one type of fee where an attorney will charge based on how much you win at trial. That's called a contingent fee, and the attorney's fee is based on a percentage of those winnings. The burden of proof in a civil case, the burden of proof in a criminal case. They're both questions on the exam. The Supreme Court justices and all federal judges serve, we usually say for life, and effectively that's true, but the actual wording in the Constitution is during good behavior. Chapter 4 includes 6 questions. Again, one of those really comes in the first chapter. Ethics that we study is the study of what constitutes right and wrong behavior. And of course, we put that in the business context, but ethics in general is the study of right and wrong behavior. A common ethical dilemma faced by corporations because of their structure, with the shareholders electing the board of directors making major decisions, and officers making day-to-day decisions, including other people like employees, the community where the business is located, maybe they got some tax incentives to be there, and even consumers and society in general. That creates a lot of ethical dilemmas. And so all of those people, the problem is that we have to make decisions that affect all of those people when we're making corporate decisions. And the question you came in on, which is this 5 minutes later, so you missed 5 minutes, is according to this school of ethical philosophy, which we really studied in chapter 1, there is no such thing as natural rights, and whether a law is good or bad is irrelevant. That was the positivist school. Remember, they go strictly by the book. Whatever the law is, the law is. Suppose that a company suggests to its employees that they apply the categorical imperative. What is the categorical imperative? Remember, it's quite a mouthful. Now, do you need to memorize the categorical imperative? No. You just need to be able to recognize it in a multiple choice question. Therefore, remember, you don't have to remember everything. There's some things you need to just be able to see when you see it in a question. In making marketing decisions, a company chief operating officer decides to take a utilitarian perspective, with cost-benefit analysis, something like that. What is the utilitarian perspective? Like the categorical imperative, there's a long version. With utilitarianism, there's also a short version, which is the greatest good for the greatest people. Know the long version. You're welcome to stay home if you like. Questions of corporate social responsibility involve the extent to which a corporation has ethical duties beyond those duties mandated by law. Remember that the law does not embody all ethical things. In other words, just because it's legal does not necessarily mean it's ethical. Chapters 5 and 7 dealing with constitutional law. We'll put the two of them together in 7 questions. The written document adopted by the Constitutional Convention of 1787 became known as the U.S. Constitution. The Bill of Rights refers to the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Leith, don't worry, just sit anywhere. We studied a case in the Constitution, a little section there that was not in the book, but I put it on the board, but it was similar to one in the book called Heart of Atlanta Hotel. And in a similar case, a guy named McClung ran a barbecue place in Alabama. And his name was Mr. McClung. He actually sued the Department of Justice and Neil Katzenbach, who was the United States Attorney General. He said he was not engaged in any kind of violation of the Commerce Clause or the Civil Rights legislation of 1964. And he wasn't about to serve people of color. Shiver, you can plug it in down here or plug it in right here. There's a jack.
Charged it last night.
Huh?
Charged it last night.
All right. And anyway, this answer in the book is that the court decided he was engaged in interstate commerce. There are two answers in the exam that are identical except for two letters. One of them says intrastate, the other says interstate. The answer is interstate. The court said he was involved in interstate commerce because he was involved in buying supplies and food to serve his barbecue, even though he was not advertising or even had people who were clients of his who were from out of town. Freedom of speech protects a lot of things, but it's not absolute. It does not protect against defamation. It does not protect against hate speech or pornography if we only knew how to define those things, and that's been a problem. According to legal scholars, among all the constitutional clauses we've studied, including those in the U.S. Constitution and in all its amendments, the most important clause for business is the Commerce Clause. If the police or government is trying to search you with or without a warrant, they can sometimes do it without a warrant. So this is one of the exceptions to a search warrant. If they see something which is in plain view, this would include searching the inside of your car. If they look through the windows with a flashlight and see the butt of a gun or a knife, which is a concealed weapon, an open container of some kind of alcoholic fluid or something like that, or a marijuana roach in the ashtray. All of those are called the plain view exception to the requirement of getting a warrant. According to the exclusionary rule, there's evidence which is illegally obtained by the police. It will be excluded from introduction at trial. The exclusionary rule is where Miranda rights are violated, search warrant was violated, whatever it was, the police did something illegal and the evidence they obtained is excluded at trial. So that's called exclusionary rule. Chapter 8, International Law and a Global Economy. This is one of the chapters you took up since the last test. Therefore, it and chapters 9 and 10 on contracts will make up 51 questions out of the 102 questions on this test. In other words, exactly half of the test. Chapter 8, 15 questions. Restrictions on imports in the United States and other nations include tariffs, quotas, and strict prohibitions, not just quotas, but actual strict prohibition. Remember, this is on imports. Exports cannot be regulated with as many things. You cannot have a tariff, for instance, on an export. The European Union is a regional trade organization that was created through a bilateral or multilateral agreement. This would be a multilateral agreement. Mexico has a civil law system. In theory, in this system, the courts cannot create any kind of their own laws. They can interpret laws and they can enforce them, but they can't develop their own laws. Suppose a citizen of Ireland sues a citizen of the United States for a breach of contract. The citizen of Ireland sues in Ireland and obtains a damages award and then tries to get his Irish court award of damages enforced in the United States. The U.S. court defers to and enforces the Irish court's decree. That's an application of what doctrine? That's the doctrine or the principle of comity. By the way, I was talking to somebody about comity, about licensing. And there are ways, that people can be licensed in different states. We were talking about that the other day, about getting licensed in Tennessee as an